This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we have a great Power Pundit panel here. As always, Mike Bosma is here with the Bosma Group, Amy Curtis Weber, Executive Director of the Washoe County Democratic Party, and Mary Lau, President and CEO of the Retail Association of Nevada, one of our proud sponsors. Pleasure to have you all here. Okay, Mike, you know, this is the morning after the election, so it's November 5th that we're taping this show. And the headline in the New York Times, GOP wins 2 key governor's races, and Bloomberg prevails in a close contest. Your thoughts on the governor's races first?
Well, you know, it's interesting. What I read into those races really were people are fed up, and I think they resounded. There was a resounding victory for those parties, and there were some victories either way, depending on the tomfoolery that was going on. So I think, particularly going into this next election cycle, it'll be very interesting that. Will the elected officials really listen to their constituency, or just is it business as usual? Because I think it sounds like people are tired of business as usual.
Well, one of the things that I found interesting was that at this point, 1 year in, exactly, that President Obama does not have legs when it comes to statewide races.
Right.
And, you know, he spent a lot of time, especially with John Corzine going into New Jersey, and that didn't help him. What does that bode for Nevada?
You know, I don't necessarily think that this was a bellwether race. You know, John Corzine had a few problems going in. Sure. You know, and any, I don't care what your political party is, if there are ethics questions, they need to be considered and they need to be looked at. So there was that. And I think in Virginia we saw that coming for a long time. So you know, I don't see this as some sort of an indictment of the Democratic Party nor of President Obama. And that's just the way I look at it.
Well, one of the things that's also interesting is the amount of money, both in the Bloomberg race and the Corzine race, their personal wealth that they put into this. You know, we're looking at Senator Reid saying that he's going to have a $25 million war chest. How much does that really mean in the end?
Doesn't mean anything in the end. I mean, you can buy as much TV as you can get. You can pay for other candidates to have a get out the vote strategy and stuff like that. But I do disagree on the bellwether part of it. I do think it's a bellwether decision that's been made, and not necessarily an indictment on Republicans versus Democrats bellwether. It's an indictment of what you were saying, is people are fed up. I think you're going to see less I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, than I'm an American. We're almost getting this resurgence of this stuff doesn't work, we can't pay forever, it's the economy stupid, which was very popular years ago when we elected another president, and it's happened again. I mean, people are just fed up, and extremes on either side are not working. It's not good. When you look at the New York race, where somebody's in for 30 days, had no money, and Scosafaza was, in this case, the spoiler. Usually it's the independent that's the spoiler, but they would have had that race too. And immediately now everybody's packing to go to Washington again because Congress is not listening to their constituents.
You know, to a certain extent, I agree with you. What's been interesting to me in looking at the past 6 months is that you do see unrest, you know, in the American populace. But you see it, people view it through radically different lenses, and I take your point on that as well. But I think my take on it is that for the Democrats, we inherited problems, and they continue to, you know, do some really short-term memory, you know, tactics on us. You know, we inherited some problems that have to do with some of the practices, I think in particular, with corporate taxing and things of that sort.
Everybody inherits, though. That's a ridiculous excuse, because you only have 8 years in office. Then you have another one,
I don't
and you
agree.
have another one. It's always, nobody gets a 20-year plan.
You know, I'd part company with you on just this point, which is that everybody is saying we're paying more taxes and we're getting less for them. And you know what? They're right. Well, yeah. And you know why? Because 40 years ago, the corporations in this country paid a proportionate amount into the government to support all of the programs that we all, don't call them socialism, they're just programs that support people.
They don't pretty funny, Sam. Being the tax expert in the room, and that's where I guess I would part ways with you. We don't live on an island anymore called the United States of America, and the rest of the world is just trying to run to catch up. We're in a very competitive environment tax-wise. The Obama administration has recognized this as well. Corporations don't pay their fair share. You know, the numbers just don't add up. And the problem is we're at a competitive disadvantage with our corporate tax rates as opposed to those across the pond. And if we try and get our teeth into corporate tax more than we already are, it's going to create more competitive disadvantage. I saw this statistic, and I haven't validated it yet, but 51% of all Americans don't pay federal income tax. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Most of the tax that most individuals pay is Social Security, Medicare tax. So there's this kind of, it rings ironic that there's this, we're going to cut taxes when people aren't really paying taxes. We're in a pretty fair taxing society, and I say that from a standpoint of looking at what other countries do and how we line up with that. So it sounds good and it makes a good soundbite, but it really it isn't intellectually honest. And I think that's where we really have to be able to say. And I think with Harry Reid, his legacy with this health care plan isn't going to be along party lines. It's going to be whether or not this really makes sense to the average Joe on the street. And people realize, irregardless of what the tax plan to pay for it is going to be, ultimately they're going to end up paying for it. There's going to be a point where the rubber hits the road.
Well, of course. Well, you're extremely correct on your analysis, and it goes back to your point on inheriting problems, because the Bush tax cuts actually netted more revenue for the federal government at the higher level, but unfortunately that was an economic decision. The political decision to remove taxing of certain people below, they raise that standard of people who don't pay taxes, which is your point, has created that problem.
I'd like to get some hard figures on how this actually sifts out.
Yeah, and that's where we got to leave it. Thank you all. Very thoughtful discussion. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this time out.
If you have back pain, arthritis.
On our next broadcast, a man who opened an almost billion-dollar property in the middle of a recession, Anthony Marnell III will be here. He's the head of the M Resort in Las Vegas. We'll see you on the next broadcast.